This is the story of Garry, a man who thought he was a genius for wanting a disruptor in the Oval Office, only to find himself buried under the weight of his own wish fulfillment. The Gilded Descent of Garry. Garry had grown tired of the status quo. He wanted a man who spoke his mind, even if that mind was mostly a collection of mirror-polished grievances and high-calorie delusions. When President Gigantor promised to make everything humongous again and put a solid gold fountain in every driveway, Garry didn't just vote, he celebrated. He thought he was finally getting someone who told it like it is. The weight of leadership. The honeymoon phase lasted exactly 48 hours. Following the inauguration, Executive Order No. 1, the mandatory Gilded Lifestyle Act, came crashing down, literally. Garry looked up to see his ceiling sagging under the weight of a 3-ton stone statue of the president's chin. As Gigantor bellowed through the television about how heavy the chin was because it was full of leadership, Garry's house began to groan. Outside, his mailman trudged by, struggling to move in a suit of Roman armor made entirely of recycled soda cans. The cost of a sandwich. Then came the currency reform. Gigantor decided the US dollar was too thin and lacked personality. He replaced it with Gigantor's 40-pound lead discs featuring the president's winking face. Garry's attempt to buy a simple cup of coffee ended in a trip to the ER with 2 shattered femurs. At least he's shaking things up, Garry wheezed through the pain, trying to convince himself that the clanking sound of his lunch money was the sound of progress. A river runs through it. By the second week, the shaking up became literal. Gigantor ordered the tectonic plates to be more patriotic, resulting in daily earthquakes that, perplexingly, only affected people named Garry. The president then decided he needed a place to jet ski during his afternoon naps, so he rerouted the Mississippi River directly through Garry's kitchen. Garry stood waist-deep in rushing water, watching his plate smash against the cabinets, only to find a confused salmon wedged in his toaster. "I just wanted lower taxes," he gurgled as a wave hit him. The Department of Ego. The taxes did change, but not in the way Garry had hoped. The new Department of Ego required Garry to pay in personal triumphs. To fund a new moon base, which Garry realized was just a giant telescope pointed back at the president's own reflection, he was forced to hand over all his memories of happiness. A weird vacuum suction sound filled the room, and suddenly Garry couldn't remember his mother's face. In its place was a mental loop of a giant orange tie and a man screaming about television ratings. A sparkly end. As Garry sat in his flooded kitchen, crushed by a lead coin and staring at a 3-ton stone chin, he realized he might have made a tactical error. But Gigantor was always listening. Decrying Garry's negative energy, the president ordered the guards to replace Garry's oxygen with pumpkin spice-scented glitter. Coughing and sneezing through a cloud of sparkly regret, Garry watched as the sun rose, or rather, as President Gigantor declared himself the sun. Legally required to tan until he reached the shade of a radioactive clementine, Garry could only watch as the patriotic brass music of the administration distorted into a discordant, sparkly mess.